Welcome to the PIDE webinar on a very important policy issue, probably the most important policy issue facing the country, because we have virtually killed this country trying to collect revenue. Our number one priority is collecting revenue. We do everything to collect revenue. We're even willing to sacrifice growth, employment, everything for collecting revenue. So I think it's time PIDE took up the revenue challenge. So to begin, we have sort of developed this exercise around a new study done by the FBR on tax expenditures, which is a very important subject. Panel will define what it is. I don't even know what tax expenditures means, so let's understand from the panel what it is. But to begin with, I just want to do two things before we begin. As I said, this country is preoccupied with taxation. Nobody does anything in the government except talk about taxation. And as I keep saying, we are the only country in the world that calls our people tax cheats, money launderers, corrupt. We are constantly blaming ourselves, self-loathing, self-berating, without thinking positively about anything else. And we are chasing taxation. So just to begin with, I'll ask my colleagues to do a couple of minutes of presentation to set the tax situation into some perspective. First is we've got a new knowledge brief out today by a young scholar, Sarah Nizamani. She is a scholar at AERC plus a research associate at PIDE. We are these days trying to get the joint appointments. So Sarah Nizamani has done this lovely piece of work. Sarah, can you please summarize it quickly in 2 minutes for us? Are you there, Sarah? Sarah Nizamani?
Yes, sir, I'm there. Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm unable to share my screen. Can I share my
No
screen?
problem. If you can, share it. If you can't, that's fine. Can you share it?
Sir, it says that host disabled participant screen sharing.
Now you can share. Now you can share, madam.
Okay, okay.
Jaldi se kare, Sarah.
Yes, sir. Sir, so thank you for arranging this forum and giving me an opportunity to speak. Basically, this all started when Dr. Haq posted on Twitter when he wanted to know, a survey on Twitter where he wanted to know if Pakistani economists believe that taxation is the path to growth. And surprisingly, 62.7% the community of Twitter, the learned or allegedly learned community of Twitter, voted for taxes being positive with growth. Now this is where my research came into, my investigation came into an action, because as a research scholar, I knew that there is enough evidence of growth and taxation being negatively related. And it also showed that how little people understand when it comes to taxation and its relationship with output, employment, and production. So then I started with my knowledge brief, which I want to share. So before I show you the hard evidence in that knowledge brief, the knowledge brief, it talks about two lost concepts of economics. So the first one is that the more something costs, the less of it you have it. For example, pricier cars are sold less because of the high cost. And similarly, the more higher the more high it is to hire people, the more unemployment you see. And the second point, which I talk about in the knowledge brief, is that if the administration takes your money, you do not have it. I mean, the basic, the mere fact, sir, that if a firm loses $1, it loses the entire dollar. But when it profits from $1, it just keeps to get 50 cents out of it. And then to think that this kind of policy will not affect the production decision of a firm, I think I don't understand how people who understand economics talk about this. So, sir, moving to the evidence, if you look at the evidence, I have looked at 50 studies for this. And these are panel studies, these are cross-sectional studies, these are international, these are national. So if you look at the relationship between taxation and growth, you would see that 99% of these studies are stating negative growth with a negative relationship of growth and taxation. This is for all those, this is hard evidence for all those 62.7% people who selected that growth is good for, taxation is good for growth. These are all the studies in the knowledge brief. And it concludes, it talks about that we are frequently called tax thieves, and we are told by donors to increase our tax for two basic reasons, which is that more taxation will allow more resource collection for the government to finance development. And the second point is that the more ownership in the country would increase if we have adopt a Western welfare model with social security nets. But the question is, will it work? Dr. Huck's studies, his book, it shows that Pakistan, including many other, it shows that Pakistan does not have a competent state that will use the increased revenue wisely. Secondly, high taxation is required to return debt accumulated by the government instead of building checks on government's capacity to acquire debt and poorly signed projects like Recodic. And third, Pakistan is asked to copy the Western social net safety nets. But while it stands at the stage of development without growth, we have the 2001 paper of Visserli on this. So there is enough evidence that tax revenue, the bigger problem is of the competence and not of tax revenue. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks. Acha ji, quickly, Sarah, take off your slides. Khalid Sab, can you summarize whatever PID is done on tax very quickly? You have less than 2 minutes. Sarah's taken more time, so quickly. Khalid Mahmood Khalid, sorry.
Thank you. Mansoor, can you upload my slides? Well, to begin with, PIDE has been actively working on the tax policy front since it was evidence-based identification that our tax policy design is not growth inclusive, and it's basically business choking, and it has a lot of loopholes which, if can be improved, can really help in terms of economic activity going on. So we started off with a very good one-day conference on this, in which major issues in terms of the administration and other things were highlighted, and then we have been working on different aspects since then in terms of putting out the evidence-based policies. Next, Mansoor, please. So broadly speaking, if I can summarize what our tax policy today is, that it sets an elusive tax to GDP targets, and the FBR is literally chasing it out through arbitrary measures. So when we talk about setting the right kinds of targets, that doesn't happen because the revenue pursuit is upfront and the growth is not taken into consideration. The second is the policy does not follow the principles of fairness, certainty, efficiency, and convenience. And when we take up this issue in the next slide, I'll talk about how our reforms actually suggest to overcome these taxation principles issue as well. Overall, the tax policy is killing transactions. It is basically choking the businesses in terms of requirements for the documentation, the filing of the returns, and having a compliance cost which is very high. We have many budgets, and we have sales tax regimes which are fragmented across different revenue authorities, which creates uncertainty in terms of the businesses doing things. We have estimated that the excessive documentation cost alone increases the compliance cost by almost 250,000 per business. And just imagine a small business whose turnover is not very large is also paying the same cost as compared to a very large business. And we have not included the premises and other costs in it. On the tariff side, the tariff policy is basically strangling the competition and growth. It doesn't take into account the concept of how the inputs can really help in terms of producing the value-added outputs. If you compare the average effective tariff rates across the region, then it is also very high. So overall, we have high taxes, narrow bases, differential treatments, and exemptions, which hinders the growth and the flow of revenue. So what we suggested in terms of the reforms in one of our policy document. Next, Mansoor. Mansoor, next, please. So what we suggested in terms of having the improvement, ek piche kar lein, Mansoor, one ek piche kar lein. The first thing which we talked about is to reduce the withholding tax regime lines, which we estimated that almost 35 out of around 67 are not contributing more than 1% of the revenue. And the same is for the sales tax and the federal excise duty and the customs. So that is what we called as a revenue non-spinners. They're not actually contributing to the FBR that much, but they're putting the businesses in a bad type of a place where they have to bear the higher compliance cost. So there is business choking documentation which needs to be reduced, and there we suggested that the tax filing should be mandatory rather than putting the distinction between the filer and non-filer and creating incentives for actually non-filing. We should have simply mandatory tax filing. Then we have talked about that how the income tax blocks are separated to create even lesser marginal tax rates. So we have suggested that the income tax should be universal and not segmented. Next, Mansoor. Mansoor, next. Mansoor, next. All right, sir. So in the last slide, what we suggested in terms of the policy reforms was to have a simplified tax code which can really help the revenue collection and growth. The tax exemptions and the concessions actually lead to significant loss of revenue and needs to be understood that how they can be improved. And this is basically the purpose of this seminar as well. So PIDE is actively working on these things, and we have placed these policy reforms which are evidence-based on our websites as well, and we continue to strive out towards it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Khalid sir. Thank you, folks. As we pointed out very simply, we need a clever tax policy. We have been kind of killing growth for a long time. And unfortunately, this debate occurred because I had CDPR people, the donors, and they were all saying that we have to increase taxation to improve governance. And I just can't figure out how. So Saran Zamani has proven that point. But let's get to the subject of the day. We are talking about tax expenditures, a report that FBR has put out. First of all, let me thank FBR for putting out this report. I think it's timely. It's very important that FBR starts telling us things. I've long said that FBR should substantiate what it says. For example, FBR said that we had, 300 billion lying in Swiss banks, but we haven't seen a report of that. So good, we are seeing this. So we've got here with us a great panel. We couldn't get Ashfaq Sahab because he was called to the Ministry of Finance for a meeting, but we've got Rima Masood. She's the Chief Inland Revenue Policy, and she herself is one of the authors of the report. She's worked on this, so we are very glad to have you, Rima, baby. It's wonderful to have you here. So we'll let you lead the debate. Then we've got Ikram al-Haq, a well-known personality, who writes a lot. In fact, probably the most prolific writer on taxation, probably the best authority on taxation in the country. We're always pleased to have Ikram al-Haq Sahab. And then finally, we've got Shahid Kardar, another well-known personality, a writer, a thinker, a former Minister of Finance for the Punjab, a former Governor of the Central Bank, right now Beacon House Vice Chancellor. Shahid is always welcome. Shahid always is very provocative and very interesting to talk to. So we've got a great panel. So let me begin with Rima Masood. Rima Bibi, can you please present your report and tell us what you have found? Thank you.
Ji sir, Assalamualaikum sir, it's a pleasure being here first of all. I'm sorry that the member tax policy was called off at the last minute, so I'm having to represent it. I'm incidentally also an alumni of PIDE University, the economics department. Yes, so I mean, when I passed out in 1999, I didn't realize that this heavy responsibility would rest on my shoulders, but we are trying to do the best we can, sir. Sir, as far as the report goes, could I have about 7 minutes just to, I have a small presentation with your permission, sir?
Take your time, take your time, do it. You are the star of the show.
Ji, sir.
Needless to say, Nadeem has already made up his mind.
Ji, sir.
Just go
like, no, it's not happening.
आगे जी नजर आ रही
जी सर नजर आ गया सर पहले तो sir I'm sure कि हमसे ज़्यादा आपको the theoretical aspect of what a tax expenditure is I'm sure sir कि हम तो we are just novices compared to you.
Explain it, the audience, everybody should know, so please explain everything. Go ahead.
जी sir.
Yes.
Sir basically हमारा जो था there were two sir basically तो sir एक technical mission आया था IMF का. And they insisted that they should be that, you know, to enhance accountability and fiscal transparency, FBR has to come up with a tax expenditure report. So just to give you, but frankly, because we're sitting amongst friends, really there's no strong tax policy unit. I just have about 4 secretaries, young people, and you know, they put in day and night, and they were able to come up with this report. So total of about three to four people, and young people at that, they basically worked in formulating this report. We tried our best, sir, but of course I do acknowledge that there's room for improvement and there are gaps, and we're hoping to learn from you and take up your suggestions in this regard. सर जहाँ पे टैक्स एक्सपेंडिचर की बात है सर, हमने कहा कि बेसिकली हमने जो अप्रोच यूज की है दैट इज कि it is the revenue foregone approach, sir. If I could just go over here. So why is tax expenditure reporting important? Obviously, sir, for fiscal transparency and accountability, that was the basic thing. The general public should know कि अगर एक tax exemption है, what is the cost of that tax exemption? Ranging from, for example, because under chief income tax policy, जो हम judges को हम देते मरात, उनको exemptions हैं, ranging from small to big. So, sir, it is an open document. It's on the website, so anybody can have access to it. Obviously, sir, this should contribute as a part of good governance. And so, for us, ये है कि it would be an informed decision making. कि कौन सा ऐसा tax exemption है, should we do away with? कौन सा ऐसा है whose socio-economic benefit perhaps overshadows the tax aspect? कौन सा हमने रखना है, कौन सा हमने नहीं रखना? So, sir, the formulation of this report was very important, sir. And I'm proud, sir, कि it was done. We were able to do it last year. जैसा तैसा भी sir है, it is, I hope, a step in the right direction. दूसरा, sir, we were mandated by the Public Finance Management 2019 में ये एक्ट पास हुआ, in which के जो है फेडरल गवर्नमेंट को मैंडेट किया गया है that they should lay a statement of estimated tax expenditure before the parliament as part of the finance bill, sir, and that we were, sir, able to do this year. Also, sir, as you would be knowing, this is a key deliverable. The publication of this report was a key deliverable for the World Bank project, for the Pakistan Raises Revenue project, sir. And of course, to IMF की जो technical team है, they also very strongly suggested कि इस तरह का there should be a document, for open to the general public. So generally, जो types of tax expenditures हैं, which are encapsulated in our 3 tax codes, sir. I'll talk about income tax, sir, the Income Tax Ordinance 2001, the Sales Tax Act 1990, and the Customs tax law. So 3 taxes, sir, बल्कि 4, federal excise also, FBR, sir, administer जो है कर रहा है. The types of expenditures, sir, and I'm sure कि हमारा जो है participants would be knowing कि exemptions हैं, sir, basically, which are exclusions from the tax base, allowances हैं, tax allowances हैं कि in which amounts are the tax base before applying the tax rates. We have tax credits in which we take out a certain amount from the tax liability. We have rate relief, reduced rates in some cases, and we also have tax deferrals in which ये भी एक type of tax expenditure सर हैं जो है types में. So this is just a short overview कि हमारा जो है इसकी जो public policy objectives होते हैं उसके बारे में, if you can see the screen, they're used to achieve policy objectives which actually deviate from the core function of our tax system, which is to collect revenue, sir. So reporting such expenditures, sir, as you know, it is an international best practice, and it is it's fundamental in fostering government budgetary and fiscal transparency as well, sir. So that's what we are trying to achieve, sir, to some extent. So जो हमने methodology use की, sir, because we don't have, we are bureaucrats, we are not a technical जो है per se. लेकिन जो basic, the most simplistic approach which we could lay our hands on was the revenue foregone approach, meaning thereby कि अगर ये exemption ना होती, then X revenue would have come in. And now that we have given this tax exemption, we are foregoing collection of Y amount of revenue. But of course, ये simplistic एक model तो था, and this was the best which we could do the first year. But this methodology set assumes that there shall be no behavioral change amongst the beneficiaries of these tax exemptions. So that is a very big जो है caveat, sir. because we really can't predict कि अगर हम एक tax exemption को withdraw करते हैं उस वक्त क्या macroeconomic circumstances होंगे. For example, COVID came in, and what the behavior of these groups who were previously entitled वो कैसे होगा. So ये approach was simplistic, sir. लेकिन I can't say that it was 100% accurate because ये जो assumption है कि कोई behavior change नहीं होगा. This is one of the main जो है caveats in this, sir. So ये दो और किस्म के हैं, the final revenue gain method and the outlay equivalence method. These are probably slightly more advanced. I'm just skimming through it, sir, because there's less time. But these are slightly more advanced ways of computing a tax revenues. लेकिन we opted for the revenue foregone approach, sir. ये इनका एक slide है, ये है, sir. So that I'll talk about. Sir, इसमें हमारे पास जो World Bank का जो feedback आया कि the methodology employed for income tax, sir, like I said, we employed for income tax exemptions, we employed the revenue foregone approach, and the World Bank was उनका जो feedback आया, they were mostly okay with that. लेकिन sir जहाँ पे sales tax की हमारी exemptions थी, तो वहाँ पे they said कि a better approach would have been the VAT gap model, sir. And so we look to you, we look to economists, to PIDE, sir, कि अगर maybe this year, because we wish to improve the methodology this year, and we can, if you can suggest some consultants or economists working कि जो हमें इस तरीके से help करे कि we are able to compute the tax expenditure for sales tax on the basis of the VAT gap model, sir, कि ये doable है, doable नहीं है. So, sir, we look to you, sir, for guidance, to PIDE and other economists on board, if they can help us in this endeavor this year. So, obviously, drawbacks of tax expenditure, sir, aapke samne hai ki we already have a narrow tax base. It results in further narrowing or a further compression of the tax base available. Obviously, sir, tax expenditure से ये भी होता है कि inequities are created across taxpayers. अगर एक बंदा है to have similar incomes या similar assets, एक को exemption है, एक को नहीं है. So it does result in creation of various inequities. Of course, जब आप एक exemption देते हो, there is a very real chance that it will be misused, resulting in inappropriate use by people not authorized to such exemption. And obviously, this results in leakage of revenue. And also, sir, there have been various studies जो कि हमने भी देखी हैं, और वो ये है कि tax expenditures, I mean, if you give a tax exemption, that is probably not the crucial determinant in whether somebody would be willing to or not willing to make an investment. So, it is not the only factor, certainly, and ये studies हैं कि it is ये prove नहीं हुआ कि ये tax exemption देने से या special economic zone बनाने से या और कुछ करने से necessarily it would be attracting higher investment, sir. Obviously, sir, एक और था कि जब एक tax expenditure का आपको जो है पता ही नहीं है, so there is less transparency, and that was something which we really wanted to address, which I'm happy about. Anybody can pick up the report and hold the government or anybody else accountable. कि जी ये है, ये जो मरात है, ये X category of person को जो है दिया गया है और क्यों दिया गया है, and why are we foregoing this much amount of revenue? So, sir, I feel proud that at least in whatever, maybe it's a rudimentary report, इसमें improvement भी हो सकती है, लेकिन it's there on the web for everybody to see, sir. And of course, ये जो है accountability or transparency, sir, I hope कि इससे enhance हुई हो. And ये sir, इसके थे, this was all about this. Sir, the IMF technical mission, sir, उस वक्त हमारे जो member tax policy थे हामिद अतीक साहब, sir, Dr. Hamid Atiq साहब, and I sat with I was part of the parlance with the IMF technical team in October 2019 में sir आए थे, ये pre-COVID. And they also stressed that tax expenditure reviews are important instruments to identify possible options for revenue mobilization. कि कौन से ग्रुप को ज़्यादा एग्जेम्पशन जा रही है, कौन से नहीं जा रही. So they're good markers for a judicious tax policy. And they were insistent and they really strongly suggested कि इस तरह की एक annual expenditure report हम वो करें शाया, which we were alhamdulillah able to do. And of course, we've made this a part of the formal budget, a document also, sir, for the first time. Sir, iska thoda sa, I would like to talk, sir, about the political economy of tax exemptions. Sir, Dr. Behmood साहब ने भी कहा कि for us in FBR, हमारा तो it is जो है firefighting, because we are, whether we are, and especially now that we are in an IMF program, tax to GDP ratio का target है, obviously आपका जो revenue collection का target है, so we are inundated with we have to make stopgap arrangements to achieve that target. So we're running after targets. IMF ये कहता है कि this is their point of view, which I'm for the benefit of our participants putting forth. वो ये कहते थे very plainly कि जो आपके हालात है पाकिस्तान के, given the tax to GDP ratio, given your problems with revenue collection, वो ये कहते हैं कि you people don't have the luxury of giving tax exemptions right, left, back and center, क्योंकि आपके पास ये leeway ही नहीं है, because it's eating too much into your tax revenues, और आपके हालात पहले भी it leaves much to be desired. And they said that probably a more advanced economy जिनके हालात बेहतर हो, they had this luxury कि वो एक social या economic benefit के लिए या किसी जो है मतलब for social benefit or some other sort of benefit tax code को इस्तेमाल करें. लेकिन उनका ये कहना था कि आप अपने tax code को सिर्फ इस्तेमाल करें for taxation, and it should not be used as a tool for pursuing any other objective other than tax. So this was their point of view, which I'm putting forth to you. Sir, इसकी political economy इस तरह है कि जब हमारा जो है budget बनता है, और जितनी tax exemptions over a series of years जो आप हमारे tax codes में देखते हैं, I as chief income tax policy or the member policy would be the last person to say कि जी because this is not our job. हम ये नहीं कहते कि जी आप इस group को, इस area को, इस commodity को आप tax exempt करें या उसमें rate आप reduce करें. We do not sponsor or recommend these tax expenditures. However, these exemptions come from other ministries or other stakeholders. So for us revenue is prime, लेकिन जो ये insert हुई है over a number of years, और obviously आपको ये पता ही है कि कोई जो ministry है, for example अगर Ministry of Industries है, वो अपना देखेगी, telecommunication है अपना देखेगी, information technology है वो अपना देखेगी, tourism है वो अपना देखेगी, and then there's a lot of like you say जो है pressure groups होते हैं during the budget, people who are running helter skelter everywhere. तो sir ये basically मतलब हम ये tax expenditure जो है, it's eventually a purely political decision, but it is not, हम suggest नहीं करते कि जी इस शोबे को ये जो है tax exemption जो है दी जाए. हम तो ये कहते हैं कि बजाय कि आप इसको tackle करें through tax expenditures, it's better कि उस शोबे को आप एक direct subsidy दें. लेकिन this is the political economy sir जो है prevails, and interest groups होते हैं, कुछ जायज़ कुछ जो है ना जायज़, and eventually FBR तो will do what it has to do in the end. तो जब ministry से और बाकी stakeholders से, chambers of commerce से, हजारों लोगों से हमें जब आते हैं suggestions, हम उनको कहते हैं कि आप हमें quantify कर दें कि if you're able to do so कि ये कितना leakage of revenue होगा, लेकिन at that time they're not even able to do that. They just say कि जी ये हमें चाहिए and this is the end of it. At the end of the day, sir, it is the decision of the government, जो भी government है कि किसको देना है, किसको नहीं देना. लेकिन proponents of this tax exemption वो FBR certainly नहीं है. Of course, लेकिन after it has been given, so we are left to quantify such exemptions afterwards, sir, which we have tried to do. Sir, I would also like to see कि कम से कम ये जो है sales tax और income tax में अभी बहुत हमारे ऊपर आता है since 2018 कि अब हमारे पास we can only make an amendment in the tax statute in only certain specific circumstances, and that too only with the approval of the federal cabinet. Matlab, if I'm sitting here today, or if the member policy is sitting, or even the chairman FBR, वो कोई ऐसा रो नहीं निकाल सकते और कि या कोई amendment वो करे in the sales tax law or the income tax law. We are bound sir कि ये अब जो law obtaining है, अभी जो current है वो ये है कि जो federal government है, that is the cabinet headed by the prime minister, वो competent है to provide a tax relief, but in only in specific जो है situations. और वो यहाँ पे से आ रही है in cases of national security, national natural disaster, protection of national economic interests in situations arising out of abnormal fluctuations in international commodity prices, national food security, and implementation of bilateral and multilateral agreements. For example, sir, अभी हमने जो है because जो COVID है, इसका जो onslaught है, obviously it's been felt all over the world. तो हमने इसी के तहत हमने कुछ SROs किए हैं for COVID-19. So, but otherwise we don't have an open field at all. The decision is taken by the cabinet headed by the prime minister, और वो भी in certain specific circumstances. अगर आपने कुछ और डलवाना है, it has to be done either through a money bill or of course through the promulgation of an ordinance by the president. तो हमारे जो discretionary powers हैं sir, वो हमारे काफी हद तक almost मैं कहूँगी 100% ही curtail हो गए हैं sir. So just coming to the report now, and I'll be happy to answer any questions afterwards. कि sir हमने जो estimate किया through this revenue foregone approach in income tax, sales tax में भी sir हमने revenue foregone approach लिया. The World Bank subsequently उनके comment आए कि you should have utilized the other methodology, लेकिन हमने कहा कि चलिए it's a start, we'll try कि this year हम करें. So the total tax expenditure sir comes out to be 1.1 जो है trillion sir, and like you can see, income tax is 33%, accounts for 33% of all tax expenditures. 45% goes to sales tax sir, or customs ka 22% है sir. And this is sir just if you can see on your screen, just a small जो है bifurcation के हमारा जो income tax है उसकी a further breakup, allowances, tax credit, exemptions from total income. ये हमारा second schedule है, part 1, 2, 3 and 4. और जो government है sir, एक हमारा clause है section 59, in which the federal government, the provincial government and the local government sir they are exempt. उनका हमने sir हमें काफी मुश्किल हुई, but हमने एक in sort of getting data from third parties, and we were not able to get the entire data either. लेकिन अभी हमने तकरीबन 18 billion का sir हमने estimate किया for the federal and provincial governments उनकी exemption की वजह से. इसी तरह sir we have sales tax over here. This is just a small breakup कि zero rating का जो amount है, exemption on imports, exemption on local supplies, reduced rates under the 8th schedule, and so on and so forth sir. This was 518 जो है million rupees sir, and this goes for customs sir. ये हमने customs को भी broadly इस तरह bifurcate किया है. Yes sir, just ये as per the economic जो है survey, this just shows a small trend कि from 14-15 it was 412 billion जो है, and now it is 1.1 trillion sir. So इसमें I would just like to say कि दो हमें ज़्यादा handicap I would say कि हुआ था. एक से ये है that हमारी जो income tax return है, there's the people after us, politicians, National Assembly, बाकी बहुत लोग कि इसको आप simplistic रखें. Simplistic रखने के चक्कर में sir unfortunately जो pegs हैं, I mean we could not really sort of extract much data from the database of income tax returns available to us, क्योंकि उसमें वो markers नहीं है कि जो बताएं कि इस clause के तहत इतनी exemption हुई है, X, Y, Z clause के तहत इतनी हुई है. So sir, we were thinking कि we should put in some markers in the income tax returns this year, which help us to better estimate these tax expenditures next year, sir. But we have to strike a delicate balance between कि जो tax return है वो जो simple भी हो, क्योंकि लोग कहते हैं कि जी हमें obviously it's online now, so people have problems in that. So उसमें से एक delicate balance strike out होना है. लेकिन IS chief tax policy would like कि वहाँ पे हम markers insert करें कि जो हमको accurate assessment दे के क्लॉज अगर Y है या क्लॉज X है, इसके तहत कितनी टैक्स एग्जेम्पशन दी गई है सर. एंड दूसरा सर, लाइक आई मेंशन बिफोर दैट I give credit to my younger colleagues. Okay, so this entire report was compiled just by about 4 to 5 people, and we tried our best to we had to rely very heavily on third-party data, information, और हमने कोशिश की सर, but even now कई लोगों का response नहीं आया, कई लोगों का आधा आया. So this is the best which we could do this year, sir, an effort for which I'm proud of. लेकिन सर डेफिनेटली आपकी जो सजेशंस हैं regarding improvements in methodology, etc., so they would be most welcome by the FBR. And thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rima Bibi. My congratulations to you. I think sab agree karenge. This is a wonderful effort. It's absolutely something that you and your colleagues, your younger colleagues, jo bhi hain, Ashfaq Saab, Atiq Saab, everybody should be congratulated. We want such government that reports to us and gives us some information. And I think it's a very good step in that direction. My congratulations to you. बहुत अच्छी बात है.
Thank you,
But
sir.
जो
Thank you,
सोचने
sir.
वाली बात है, you're welcome जी. जो सोचने वाली बात है वो ये है कि roughly 3% of GDP tax expenditures हो गई है और ट्रेंड बढ़ रहा है. Despite the fact कि हम लोग सब सोच रहे थे कि गिर जाएगा और IMF का प्रोग्राम भी कह रहा था कि कम हो जाएगा. So with that, let me turn to Ikram Saab. Ikram Saab, you know this subject better than most of us. Can you please give us your thoughts on this and tell us how we can improve this exercise? But I think you'll agree with me, FPR has to be congratulated on this.
No, no,
Thank you
let
very
us all
much,
endorse
Dr.
that.
Nadeem and others. I have been working with Huzaima on this subject for a long time, and I am rather surprised today that FBR does not aware of the fact that a 700-page report was generated in 2014, which gives you each and every SRO, each and every exemption, what the impact was, and we proved with the econometric data was by Sultan Mahmoud, who has done his PhD recently in France, and now he's teaching in Mars and doing a postdoctoral. And this shows that perhaps nowhere we have, not blaming FPR alone, but nowhere we have a kind of sharing of our earlier work, critically examining it, and also to then proceed further. That study I have shared with PIDE and on our second book, which is PIDE Working to Publish, and that can be made part as an annexure, so that we have at one place the entire tax system reforms, expenditure, and the foolish things we have been doing, sorry for using the word, on the dictates of IMF World Bank, and still we are following their lines, knowing their failed policies. 6-year long tax administrative reform project was a great failure according to their own admission, and our paper which was recently published says World Bank funded reforms, and we have taken good analysis of that, taking all their conclusions, not saying anything from our side, which is they know very critical. But now today, since the subject is expenditure, I want to bring to the knowledge of all the worthy participants who have taken time to come that since 1973, we are violating the Constitution of Pakistan when we talk of tax expenditure, and nobody has ever pointed it out, debated it in public. Nobody has ever tried to see that after all it is the parent and the our constitution is the law from where you drive the power to levy tax. And the framers way back made two very important decisions, never changed since then, even after the 18th Amendment. One is Article 77 and the other is Article 162 before your secretary. That nobody has power to levy any kind of tax except the Act of Parliament. This is Article 77 couched in a negative language. No tax can be levied. And we have been doing it with other means without realizing what we are doing. Then I found the screen, kindly bring the next Article 162. So I explain why it cannot be done quickly. For the first time, this debate I want to open. So next slide, if it is possible from your side, or because I'm not sharing screen. Oh yes. So a very simplistic reading is saying no bill or amendment which imposes or varies a tax or duty, the whole or part of the net proceeds whereof is assigned to any province on which or which varies the meaning of the expression agriculture income as defined for the purpose of the enactments relating to income tax, or which affects the principle on which under any of the foregoing provisions of this chapter monies are or may be distributed to provinces shall be introduced. Now this is very important. Shall be introduced or moved in the National Assembly except with the previous sanction of the President. It's a very strange kind of article, which is even barring National Assembly, that if they have to give some tax expenditure, have to change rate, have to give exemption, or have to change the meaning of agriculture income because that is in the provincial domain, they can't do this without the prior sanction of the President. Have you ever noticed that our finance bill is presented in National Assembly with prior sanction of President? Because every year, not only through finance bill annually, keep on presenting amendment bills and keep on changing rates, expenditure, this and that. So whole debate, which or the FBR has done this study, that aside, but we have been violating the supreme law of the land with impunity. Legislatures are themselves guilty of not following Article 162. Provinces never objected. How dare you can change the rate, give exemptions, expenditures, because we are 50.75% shareholder in your net proceeds. How you can change your net proceeds without taking us into picture? And that is Constitution provides through previous sanction of the President. So World Bank, IMF, FBR should go back home, read Article 162 before doing any further work on the subject matter. And in future, they should not provide any kind of reliefs, exemptions, because they are neither health oriented, nor they are house oriented, nor poor oriented. On the next slide will show you what they have been doing in the past and still doing since 2012, and then justifying that this is the act of the Parliament, which also conveniently join hand with them, not only violating the Constitution, but also income tax law, custom law, sale tax. Next slide, please. And yes, the next one, please. This is, I have said the abdication has been done. It's not delegate. You can't abdicate your power to levy tax to any executive authority. Next slide, please, which show you but the point I wanted to highlight. The next slide, please, quickly, so that I can finish my theoretical side. This in the
Mansoor
meantime.
sahab, hello.
Yes. I'm not on the next slide, Nadeem.
Mansoor sahab, slide. क्या हो रहा है भाई? खालिद साहब, मंसूर साहब गायब हो गए?
Yes, this is here.
हाँ,
This is very interesting SRO, which we should read together and know what they do. The most glaring example of abuse of this delegated power, for which Parliament is equally to be blamed for abdicating, surfaced when, before presenting the Finance Bill 2013, this is the start of the era of decade of democracy in 2013, FBR issued many beneficial notifications, especially for sugar and steel industries related to persons in power in 2012, when officers of grade 19 to 20 were allowed monetized transport allowance. I'm not sure they're still using cars or not, and everybody is getting a monetized transport allowance. Under SRO, which is here of 26th May, just a few days before Parliament was there, you could have presented it there, but they completely concealed it from the Parliament, providing that government officers in grade 20 to 22 would pay just 5% tax on this allowance as a separate block of income, whereas other private employees, they pay by 530% tax bracket, or that point of time in 2013, it was even 35%. So how this is self-serving SROs, and study that I have shared with you, we tell you that in the 10 years, they borrowed more, but the foregoing of taxes, which was the definition given by were the DG from FBR, is all kind of waivers, amnesties, you can say exemptions or edits or whatever. But you can see that what is happening in this country. This SRO still stands since 2013, and they pay just 5% on their monetized allowance. Same is the case of the judges. They don't pay tax on their judicial allowance. Then our journals, then others. So they should not present this tax expenditure was always part and parcel of next two of our economic survey for a long time, 2003 and 4. But bifurcation was not there, which is for the first time we are seeing. And this also lacks many foregoings, which we have mentioned in our article analyzing tax expenditure published in Business Recorder, and I shared with it. I know most of the participants must be knowing about that. So Nadeem, you have very rightly pointed out that on the one hand, you keep on telling us that we are tax cheat. On the other, 166 million mobile users now on 31st May 2020 are, if you take unique of them, I mean, some have 2 or 3 SIMs for their kids or for other purposes, but I have on authority of all the 4 telecom companies that in Pakistan, 95 million people are paying 12.5% adjustable advance income tax, and you are saying you are a nation of tax cheat. Tell me which country you will find this ratio. This is not the sale tax on services that provinces collect at the rate of 19.5%. So on telecom, the taxation is as high as 45%. And in all other taxes, averagely 45% come from import. At the import stage, even when transactions are taking place, not income is accruing or rising. So my humble submission in the end will be stop all this exercise, make your laws simple, remove all distortions, exemptions, and what you talk, make your taxes simplified at low rate, collect from everybody. You are already collecting from the poor, collect from everybody, and then spend it according to the constitution. It should go first to the provinces as per the formula, and not provinces should stop there. Then it should go to the local bodies under Article 140A, and there we should have direct grassroots benefit to the services. We all know municipal services, what they are. They had been in this country even when we were subjugated. We had municipal dispensaries, we have municipal schools, we have roads, we have lights, everything. So we have destroyed the system. You are critical of the present system, which is, you say, legacy of the colonial era. I say it is the worst than colonial era. Even after that, we have gone from worst to the worst to the worst, I think. And this is my end. And I think it is a thought-provoking from the point of view that in a country where since the inception of constitution, gross violation of law is committed, nobody has taken note of it. Thank you very much for giving me this chance.
Thank you, Ikram Sahab. Thank you. I think it was a good presentation. Shahid Kardar, I will rely on you to try and sum it up and tell us what you think.
Okay.
That problem, what is in knots? Can you unravel it for us, please?
What is the purpose of this seminar, considering you've already announced the verdict that PIDE has got it right? Just, okay, let me, Ikram has spoken about a few things. I'm just frankly going to focus on tax expenditure, which is the subject of this webinar. I'll also talk about where I have problems with some of the ways that these calculations have been done, estimates have been done, and secondly, more importantly, where I think they've got it wrong. I mean, let me first remind ourselves that Ikram has talked about something I wanted to. Rima has mentioned 2-3 things which I fully support because I wanted to raise them, which is I start by what will happen to if we collect all these revenues. So we are saying we are actually losing roughly 1.2 trillion rupees in revenues. A big assumption is that we would have been able to collect it. I mean, our past record doesn't inspire that kind of confidence to begin with. Second, more importantly, and Nadeem, you and I can see Amir Durrani is sitting there as well, that once you collect, so let's assume we collected this kind of revenue, the big question mark is, which is something that you've actually mentioned in it, that there would be money available for some of the more crucial social expenditures. What evidence is there to suggest that if we had collected it, we would have done what we think we would be doing with the collection of this revenue? So behavioral changes, we don't know what would have happened if we taken away these, and Rima spoke about them. There is no estimate, at least no one has done them. Let's be fair to FBR. The elasticities of revenues, and when you change tax rates, which is all about preferential rates. The VAT gap, she certainly mentioned. The tax expenditures versus what would have been reflected in the budget as subsidies are hence much more transparent than it is today. And it is creating distortions, which also means poor allocation of economic resources. Now, just to remind ourselves before I come to some of the issues that I have, take the case of allowances that Rima spoke about. The bulk of the allowances which have reflect themselves in the income tax part really relate to investments in real assets. It is investments in plant and machinery and the tax credit part of it. So we are talking about close to 117 billion. If you take into account depreciation allowances, the tax credits, that is 117 billion. The reason I emphasize this is something that I will come to a little later, because it is also, to me, links up with what I regard as the weakness in the monetary policy, and I'll link them up in a moment. The second area of total exemption, which we need to highlight, is roughly 39 billion per annum, which is the exemption of pension incomes of public servants from taxation. So that's roughly 39 billion. Others will have to pay income tax on their pension income compared with public servants. IPPs, 27 billion. In fact, this is where the first problem arises. In 2013-14, the economic survey told us that the exemption for the IPPs was 52 billion. 6 years later, I discovered it's only 27 billion, despite the fact that the number of IPPs have actually increased. So I'm just beginning to wonder how those estimates have been made. Then I hear in total exemption, State Bank of Pakistan, 50 billion, federal, provincial, local governments, 19 billion. And I'm afraid there is a conceptual error here. The income of the state bank would have gone to government. The income of the federal and provincial government would have gone to government. How is that a tax expenditure? Eventually, it would have ended. So that's not really tax expenditure, which is the state bank's 50 billion, as well as 19 billion. That would have been the taxes paid by federal, provincial, and local government. So I think there is a conceptual issue as well. In the case of reduction in tax rates and exemption on imports, bulk of them are really cream and butter, dairy products, vegetable oils, cotton, fertilizer, 74 billion under the 8th schedule, cellular phones, sugar, that's combined is about 45 billion. So we need to ask ourselves, what is the social and economic objectives that we are meeting through these exemptions, and the point that was raised by Rima herself. Customs, 253 billion. Your favorite, automobiles, the automobile sector, exemptions in customs duties of 69 billion. Okay. Poultry and textiles is another 26 and edible oils, but more importantly, the FTAs and the PTAs. The PTAs are the Mauritius, Malaysia, Indonesia. With China, the FTAs and PTAs, customs duty exemptions about 45 billion. FTAs with China apparently costs us 34 billion. My guess is that it is understated because we don't know what rates they have used as the average rate from which to assess it. And the reason I emphasize it is because of the high level of under-invoicing from China. So to begin with, you have a price which is understated, and then you can use rates that are not very clear to me at the moment because I'm sure the estimates have been done quite religiously. And just to commend the FBR once again for a wonderful job done. So the FTA part, I think, is on the low side. CPEC, in my opinion, is not fully covered. IPPs I've already spoken about, because what we are now being told is that in 2020, the actual benefit to the IPPs is 48% lower than what it was in 2013-14. The fourth area, which has not been mentioned, is blocks of income like interest and dividends. They are taxed at a different rate. So someone whose marginal rate of tax would be, say, 30%, is only paying 30% to 50% of the tax that he would have been required to pay. And this is important. Why? What is happening is that the monetary policy with its single sole objective of actually tackling inflation through the interest rate is actually, as I see it, rewarding those who are financing or have their investments or holding financial assets. Whereas you and I, Nadeem, would strongly argue that we should be incentivizing investments in real estate, in real assets to spur growth, to take care of employment, because frankly, these are not the objectives of the State Bank, and we need to revisit those. We cannot have a sole objective in terms of, and the reason I emphasize it is because of the special exemptions given to these blocks of income of groups in society, frankly, who are rich anyway. And it actually increases the inequities in the system. Who are the ones who are benefiting? Shareholders of banks, okay, and those holding large deposits. And certainly we are in fact enhancing the inequities in the system. The fifth area is the export feature tax of 1%. That part has not been taken care of in this tax expenditures treatment. The tax treatment of capital gains on shares and properties, and I want to focus on properties for a moment. We have holding period limitations. In India, everyone pays at least 10%. So we need to have a capital gains tax on properties. Yes, we can have a much lower rate for longer term transactions. The seventh area, which I know is your and my favorite, Nadeem, is interest expenditures which are allowed to corporations as part of their legitimate expenditures for business purposes. And in fact, had we put limits on what should have been a debt equity ratio religiously applied from the point of view of them not being able to get interest exemptions fully as deductible expenses against their profits for the year, we could have had a much better system in terms of not just more equitable, but more importantly, forcing some of the big boys to actually use their own equity and make some of this money which is available in the banking system available to the SMEs and so on. Finally, this area, understandably, that has been dealt with by FBR doesn't cover the provincial taxes. So provincial taxes, apart from agricultural income tax, very little is available at the moment on the provincial GSTs. So some of them is really not being collected. So in a sense, we don't have a tax expenditure because they're not actually exempted, but are not being collected. So we need to look at that aspect even at the provincial level. And finally, it's property tax. Again, nothing in terms of tax expenditure, but more importantly, just to remind ourselves, and we've discussed that at length as part of the work that was discussed with PIDE and has been included in some of the work, the publications that you put out. Property tax, just to give you an example, property tax collection in Mumbai alone is $750 million a year. In Punjab, Pakistan as a whole, compared with Mumbai as a city, is only 75 million. And in fact, Mumbai collects 5 times the property tax collected by Pakistan as a whole. So some of the misunderstandings of what tax expenditures should be called, should be classified, what should be classified as tax expenditures, where I think some of the estimates need to be revisited. I know this is the first attempt and a bloody good attempt at it. Third, certain exemptions the economists talked about, and I think those are reflected, the monetary allowance in the estimates. Interest and dividend blocks of income, tax treatment of capital gains, interest expenditure which is deductible against profits. I think these are areas that we need to start looking at to be able to get a much fairer system of taxation. Had it been, as also mentioned by Rima, reflected in the budget, it should be much more transparent. But at least it's a huge step forward that now we're beginning to see what the impact is. I won't comment on the tax to GDP ratios that have been talked about. Your and my favorite topic. We actually spent a fair amount of time arguing against the stupidity of using tax to GDP ratios wherever we think they should be. So we start comparing with China, and obviously never look at per capita income. But I won't go into that because this is an area that has been dealt with separately. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. A lot of stuff that you've given me for the yeah. But again, I reiterate what you said. This is a great beginning, wonderful report. I think it will give us a lot to chew on. And yes, of course, evolution and everything improves over time. I think in 10 years' time, this will be wonderful. Let me just say one thing on Mumbai. I think Shahid, you also have to think about the output of Mumbai. Sensex alone, Mumbai, the Sensex alone is worth 10 times Pakistan's stock exchange. So I think when we make a comparison with Mumbai, we should also look at the productivity of Mumbai, because it's a hugely productive city from the level of New York.
Yeah, but even if, well, that's why I included Karachi and the entire country, just to give a, a semblance of where we are.
Fair point. But I think Mumbai is way ahead of Karachi or anything in Pakistan. Anyway.
No, I agree. But then I'm comparing Mumbai with the entire country. Anyway.
So let's take some comments from the floor. Mr. Javed Masood. Javed Masood Saab. Are you there? Javed Masood Saab? No, he's not there. Okay. Anybody else from the floor, or should I go back to Chaliye ji, Dima Bibi? Why don't you respond to some of these things, and let's see if people have any questions.
Ji, sir, thank you so much, sir. Shahid Kardar, sir, some very, very pertinent observations, sir, and we learned from you, sir, so thank you. सर बिल्कुल पहला तो ये है that सर ने कहा कि जो है 1.1 ट्रिलियन का हमने जो एस्टिमेट किया है, and of course I sitting here will not say that if we withdraw these exemptions तो इतना ही पैसा would come back into our kitty, sir. Absolutely not, sir, as rightly pointed out by Kardar Saab, sir, because like I said, the methodology is based on certain assumptions. We don't know, like I mentioned before also, kya circumstances honge, how the beneficiaries of these exemptions they'll behave. So, sir, just to set the record straight from FBR side that bilkul ye baat nahi ki if all these exemptions are withdrawn, to agle din hamari kitty mein 1.1 trillion ka izafa ho jayega, sir. Because obviously, sir, it's been based upon certain assumptions, sir. So I fully concur with the view put forth by Kardar sir. Sir, dusra, sir, matlab, speaking as an ordinary Pakistani, sir, because I'm also a bureaucrat and I'm an implementer. I don't get to make decisions. I'm not a political person, but really sitting here as a student of economics, as a student of taxation, I बिल्कुल समय एग्री करती हूँ शाहिद साहब के साथ that ये जो हमने एक silos बनाए हुए हैं of reduced rates on interest, of reduced rates on dividend, and especially sir जो mention किया है sir ने capital gains, absolutely agreed sir कि if it were up to me sir या अगर इसमें political economy involved ना होती तो सर जो हमने सीखा अपने उस्तादों से इनका आज़म and being just an economist sir के capital gain को आप you are saying कि जी there'll be no capital gains tax after X number of years, कभी 8 साल होता है, कभी 4 साल होता है, कभी 3 साल होता है, arbitrary होते हैं each and every year. But of course sir, there's something to be said about the political economy. हमने तो I sitting here as a bureaucrat में तो implement करना है, लेकिन if I had my way sir, capital gain tax would be taxable बेशक वो 20 साल बाद हो रहा हो या 30 साल बाद हो रहा हो, and it is not good tax policy. I fully agree sir, and if you're able to somehow convince the past that BO or the decision makers sir कि ये जो these distortions sir I would say अगर ये remove हो जाएं sir so I think they would really be good for the country and for all of us sir. So fully agreed on that point also. And sir इस बार sir आपकी बात बिल्कुल ठीक है कि we did not with regard to these reduced rates जो हमारे for example dividend interest capital gain पे है इसका हमने इस बार we did not take out the tax expenditure due to dearth of time sir. लेकिन sir अगली बार in our report we'll try to incorporate this and see कि अगर ये हम इनको ये reduced rates ना देते तो उसका क्या sir impact होना था. So sir it is well taken and we'll try that next year we incorporate this aspect too. And so the same thing for exports like sir has rightly mentioned कि exporters के लिए sir we are stuck at 1% which is final discharge of tax liability. बिल्कुल sir इसका भी it's a good suggestion कि इसको भी हमें incorporate इंशाल्लाह इसका जो tax expenditure है इसको भी हम incorporate करेंगे जो है next year. And sir what else was there sir इसमें जो आपका federal government का था sir जो शायद करदार साहब ने कहा तो sir बिल्कुल we hadn't thought of it that way that exemption federal provincial or local government को है under section जो है 49 but like you said sir the money is eventually going back into the kitty. So sir इसको we will try to look at it from that vantage point and perhaps ये जो हमने 18 billion का निकाला है sir ये भी हमने काफी मुश्किल से निकाला है from various third party information maybe not that reliable लेकिन sir इसको improve करने की कोशिश करेंगे next year and we'll see कि whether this is a tax expenditure
whether it is the same for State Bank. I didn't want to intervene. State Bank का case भी वही है because everything actually gets transferred to the federal government.
Right, sir. बिल्कुल sir. And sir, इसमें हमने एक I think which we have missed out sir कि एक हमने tax gaps analysis किया था rudimentary sir है लेकिन sir as you know जो बार-बार कहते हैं कि जो agricultural income obviously sir constitutionally we can't the federation can't levy income tax on agricultural income but इसका sir हमने एक tax gap हमने एक appendix दिया हुआ it may be interesting कि इसका हमने sir tax gap estimate किया है not tax expenditure tax gap of 69 billion sir 69 billion. So this is in the appendix in the report sir. So इसमें भी sir अगर आपसे कोई रहनुमाई PIDE से या कहीं से मिल जाए कि the provinces collecting agricultural income tax versus hypothetically अगर ये federation करती और in rates पे करती या एक बंदा जो है मतलब कि अगर एक बंदे की agricultural income है and he was supposed to pay federal income tax on it तो ये होता नतीजा और अभी जो provinces कर रही हैं उसका नतीजा X है वो Y है तो sir that would also be interesting to अभी हमने जो compute किया है sir एक rudimentary वो 69 billion है लेकिन sir इसके ऊपर भी देखा जा सकता है कि ये it's not a tax expenditure क्योंकि obviously the provinces have the mandate to collect this tax लेकिन हम ये कह रहे हैं कि अगर ये ना होता अगर federation करती तो 69 billion का हमने निकाला है एक टैक्स गैप सर तो इसमें भी सर we'll try and work with it next year.
मैं छोटी सी इस पे I didn't want to intervene but because you mentioned AIT I just mentioned it in the provincial context. Part of the problem is that the definition of agricultural income is partly reflected in the income tax ordinance. देखिए ना मैं अपना घर किराए पे देता हूँ या मेरे घर के साथ की जमीन किराए पे देता हूँ that's rental income. In the case of agriculture, that becomes agricultural income. अगर हम वो दो भी separate करके देख लें तो and I suspect कि जो आपने 69 billion calculate किया presumably पट्टे के रेट के हिसाब से किया होगा. I'm just guessing.
अच्छा, right. ये जी sir, जो है बिल्कुल sir. It is about 50,000 per acre के रेट पे सही किया था. Hassan, would you want to on a notional rate हमने से एक notional rate लिया था लेकिन सर ये methodology we would see guidance सर ये भी इंटरेस्टिंग हो सकता है कि इसमें हम क्या करें सर. And sir as far as the IPP सर आपने बिल्कुल वो ठीक निशानदेही की कि right now हमने सिर्फ 27 billion इसमें दिया है And in the economic services, like you rightly mentioned, it was more. Sir, all I can say is कि I believe that हमारा जो estimate है अभी का, I mean, it is absolutely unrealistic. वो जो है पहले कम हुआ है. The number of IPPs has also increased. हमने सर इस estimate के लिए हमने 73 IPPs के सर हमने इनके financials देखे थे, 73 for this estimate of 27 billion, sir. So, sir, I would say कि ये पहले maybe it was inaccurate or I can't really comment. But sir, I would stick by my, I would, because I looked upon this personally, और हमारे पास तमाम IPPs के नाम है, 73 IPPs को सर हमने देखा, और उसमें सर हमारा 27 बिलियन का इम्पैक्ट इस साल का सर निकल रहा था. हो सकता है सर कि unknowingly और पहले कोई समय misreporting या miscalculation होगी उस सर. तो sir, thank you for your input. It was most beneficial, sir.
आवाम की आवाज सुन सकते हैं आप थोड़ी देर के लिए?
जी सॉरी,
मैंने कहा आवाम की आवाज सुन सकते हैं आप थोड़ी देर के लिए?
कौन आवाम? आवाम है यहाँ?
आवाम से मतलब ये कि
सर
आप
मेरे ख्याल में है सर.
ये जो वर्ल्ड बैंक वाले होते हैं ये आवाम में शामिल नहीं होते.
सर मैं वर्ल्ड बैंक से अब काफी हद तक खारिज हो चुका हूँ, 6 साल हो गए, अब तो धो दीजिए.
सर जर्नलिस्ट आवाम है कि नहीं है?
जर्नलिस्ट? नहीं जर्नलिस्ट नहीं.
जी सर quickly. Yeah. So sir, I mean, I think that I listening to the debate, I think that I was like, क्या नाम है, Kardar साहब, a little puzzled about where we were going with this debate. And I think that the point which I understood from all this is there's a fundamental problem in Pakistan that, you go to any other country, and I honestly know this, this tax GDP ratio debate, I mean, you guys know better, but, in no country that I go there, all tax discussion is about FBR or whatever their IRS or whatever. This is kind of very puzzling to me. And therefore, what I find missing here, and there are 3 things happening. One is that we are not taxing what we need and closest to its point of use. You take customs or you take revenue. Both sides, for example, customs का जो principle है global, वो ये है कि मिसाल तौर पे मैंने लाल रंग का पेंट टोयोटा गाड़ी पेंट करने के लिए मंगवाया है, तो वो मैं टैक्स उसका लूंगा जहां वो इस्तेमाल हो रहा है. So I would collect that tax at whatever the assembly plant is. We pre-tax everything. We try to do this, and there are obviously rents and stuff. So the 2 things happen when you tax like this. One is it's very difficult to audit this kind of taxation. So imagine that Honda up country imports plane, and we tax Honda at the point of import rather than the point of use. So similarly, in the case of revenue and other general things like income taxes, etc., we are again so far removed from where taxes are used and where they are collected that there is no linkage. Second, I think all this discussion on exemptions is kind of like, to me, a little passé, because the world has moved to just reducing tariffs and taxes and making them more proportional. So I think one of the things that one could do best is just remove all these exemptions and just come up with a slightly different, lower rate, fewer slab taxation system. And same thing applies for tariffs, because those are mixed in the way we look at it in FBR. The third thing is, I think on the provincial effort, we again are simply thinking that the provinces should do what we expect the federation to do, which is NFC, so they should have a PFC. I think the provinces should apply a slightly more, I mean, they have now this learning from 70 plus years of Pakistan's NFC. So they should actually evolve something which is more bespoke rather than just handing revenue down. This is not done in most of the developed countries and should not be done. In fact, the NFC itself is questionable on that. Last thing that I would just like to say is we are foregoing in this discussion a lot of the local taxes because we have our taxes and how we collect them is linked to where and how we spend them. So in other words, because we are giving large swaths of our money to the provinces and the provinces therefore are down to their districts, we therefore expect that the entire effort, when you say taxing, is a debate that needs to take place at the federal level. And I think this needs to fundamentally change. So I think that's just the poor man's view on this. Well, not poor man, let's say the ordinary man's view on this.
Can I just respond to it quickly, very quickly, just one little thing. Okay, but the whole question, sorry.
just take a few more questions and I'll come back to you. Okay? Let me take a few more questions. Mehtab, bolo. The journalist might turn against us. Mehtab Haider. Mehtab Haider, क्या हो गया भाई?
Yes, thank you.
बोलें, हाँ जी.
Sir, no one had talked about the cost of amnesty schemes. For instance, the FBR introduced 2 amnesty schemes, and how much it's the cost on the tax expenditure side, because you reduce the rates, and how much is the cost on the actual revenue collection side?
I think good point taken. ठीक है. अभी आते हैं हम रीमा बीबी के पास. अच्छा जी, आलिया बीबी. आलिया. Please note these things. I'll come back.
जी जी. जी नदीम, सबसे पहले तो मैं बताना चाहूंगी कि आई एम वेरी प्राउड कि मेरी स्टूडेंट जो है उन्होंने आज इतनी अच्छी प्रेजेंटेशन दी. आई हैव टॉट रीमा एंड आई एम रियली प्राउड ऑफ हर. जी सेकंड.
It's all your effort, ma'am.
Thank you, Rima. Okay, I just want to ask a very simple question. Maybe I'm not getting it, but I really cannot understand what is the resource mobilization effort for Pakistan, in the sense that basic economics tells us that tax revenues are the basic income for the government. And here I see all kinds of currents and undercurrents, basically, vibes that the way the tax resource mobilization is being done in Pakistan is probably not the right way. Then what is the right way? That is my question to the panel and to my dear student also. Thank you.
Ruhi Bibi. Ruhi. Ruhi there?
Yes, please unmute. Are you unmuted? Hello?
We can hear you. Boliye.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I've been hearing this very interesting discussion and very, very informative also. But I was just thinking on the side of whatever you collect by way of taxes, what happens? I just wanted to find out if PIDE has studied the combined effect of subsidies, the state-owned enterprises' losses, and the guaranteed returns that the governments have been giving, how they have eaten up in whatever tax is collected. I would like you to have a look at that, and I hope that we have a talk on that.
Jawad Sahab.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. जी बोलिए. We can hear you. जवाद साहब अपने आप को म्यूट कर लिया आप. जवाद साहब unmute yourself.
Unmute है सर अब. अच्छा. Sir, question ये है कि how agricultural income tax levied in the like manner as salaried class would affect or benefit national economy or exchequer.
Good. जी सत्तार साहब.
Ji, can you hear me, sir?
Sir.
Ji, my question is very simple. If you tax the IPPs, the agreement says that tax shall be passed on in the tariff. Now, all that is doing is actually transferring an additional cost or an additional tax onto the consumers of electricity. So, I mean, when already your electricity tariffs are so high, how would you have dealt with this problem? I.e., that you need to keep the power costs down, yet you don't want to give them exemptions on it, on income. What you could have done, in my opinion, was have a tax on super profits.
Good point. Good point. Mahmood Khalid Saab, last question. Mahmood Khalid Saab.
Thank you, sir. First, I would like to congratulate Rima again, being Qaidian alumni. Very excellent presentation. Small question: looking at the quantum of these expenditures, it means that it also gives the businesses kind of choices in terms of how they want to pitch themselves for businesses. So for them, it would be maybe a good option to go for these types of exemptions where they can legally save the money. So my question is really that what are we trying to do with these exemptions? Because we don't see anything in the report related to how much economic activity did these exemptions created, how much the socio-economic well-being of the individuals have improved, because these are more individual specific, more asset specific, and they do not target any activity or outcome.
Shahid Hashmat Saab, I'm going to make an exception. Last question. Iske baad koi nahi. Shahid Hashmat Saab.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब, गुज़श्ता ईद मुबारक टू एवरीबॉडी। मैं थोड़ा सा लेट ज्वाइन किया, आई एम सॉरी फॉर दैट। मेरा क्वेश्चन है जी एग्रीकल्चर इनकम के टैक्स के बारे में, क्योंकि इसके बारे में खासी ज़्यादा कन्फ्यूजन है। आई बिलीव तमाम प्रोविंसेस ने अपनी अपनी नोटिफिकेशन इसके बारे में की है। पंजाब गवर्नमेंट का 1997 का नोटिफिकेशन है जो प्रोबेबली बाद में अमेंड हुआ है। There are two types of taxes. One is the land tax, which is on number of acres you own, and there is a certain amount which is exempted, and thereafter you उसकी slab जो है वो बढ़ती है। दूसरा agriculture income है, क्योंकि self declared income है। It is very difficult to assess the income. तो क्या इसका सिस्टम है, इसको कौन assess करेगा कि अगर आपके 50 एकड़ हैं उसके ऊपर आपने कौन सी क्रॉप लगाई, तो 50 एकड़ का टैक्स तो आपको देना ही देना है जो कि लैंड टैक्स है, या 100 एकड़ 150 एकड़ हैं, तो जो आपने क्रॉप उगाई और आपकी इनकम हुई, हाउ वुड दैट बी असेस्ड एंड हु विल डू दैट? थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Let me return to the panel. Who wants to go first? Shahid, do you want to go first?
Okay, I'll go in sequence. Amir Durrani spoke about two areas. One, apart from other things, but so we agree, well, reduced rates and import tariffs being much lower than there. If you look at the PIDE report, which is we all contributed to it, you will see exactly what you said. That's precisely what the argument was. So you just look at it, because this was all about tax expenditures. I didn't want to spend a lot of time discussing all this. This is exactly what the PIDE report, because we all sat down and went through it. And you mentioned local taxes. That's why I was disagreeing with Nadeem. Like a property tax is supposed to look after the maintenance of infrastructure at the local level. Okay? Now, Nadeem would argue against it. The reality today is that for waste to be collected, solid waste to be collected in Lahore, the contribution is also being made by residents of Bahawalpur, Pakpatan, and Multan. Why? Why shouldn't the Lahorites be paying for solid waste collection? Why shouldn't the Lahorites be paying for the underpasses, whether we like them or not, for the underpasses and the flyovers being constructed? So that's precisely the point, and I totally agree. अब आ जाए उसकी Mehtab either talked about amnesty scheme. Like Mehtab, the reality is that, and Remark and Jola in much greater detail, all incomes of Pakistanis, irrespective of where they are earned, are liable for income tax. So let's first be clear. Okay? Now, वो बाद में हुआ है कि जी ये पता चली है, and amnesties, that's not a tax expenditure in that sense. Logically, all incomes of Pakistanis who are resident in Pakistan have to pay taxes on their global income. That's the reality. ठीक है ना? So वो जो अगर कोई estimates और निकाले हैं वो कर लेंगे, but this is not a tax expenditure the way वो आप बहस करें कि जी amnesty इनको छूट दे दी, वो एक अलग बहस है. अब आप आ जाएं Shahid Sitar ne IPP Shahid, we were only talking about what has been the impact on tax expenditures because of this. We agree with you. The issue was the bad negotiations of the agreements. The tragedy is not just the bad agreements of the past. The trouble is, ये चीनियों को दे दिया 2-3 साल पहले. The tragedy the negotiations में है. It's not debatable कि भाई आपने ये किया क्या है. ठीक? So I agree with you, and Ikram will bear me out कि अब कुछ चीजों पे वो टैक्स दे रहे हैं. वो किस चीजों पे दे रहे हैं which are not directly related to their operational income. For interest, they actually pay income tax on interest income. So कुछ हद तक वो हो रहा है, but the real problem is that we negotiated badly. So I agree with you in the overall context. But reality ये है कि what we should have not done is to have given the kind of exemptions we did to the Chinese, having learned from the experience of the past. तो आपकी बात ठीक है. अब वो जो बहस है ना कि जी super profits क्या है, वो बहस कभी खत्म नहीं होगी. And insofar as incomes which are not directly related to the operation, example being interest income, they're actually paying taxes on it. Tax expenditures का जो impact है, जो खालिद ने बात की, क्योंकि उस पर भी उस तरह काम actually नहीं हुआ है. We don't even know to what extent there was a misallocation of resources away from one area to the other. ठीक है? I mean, a classic example is this IPPs. We are a diversion of resources have gone into IPPs. हम बातें तो करते रहते हैं, शायद सितार को हमसे ज़्यादा पता है इसका, कि जी बड़ी इन्वेस्टमेंट हुई है, फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर, क्या फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर, सारे मेजॉरिटी तो पाकिस्तानी है, नाम सबके पता है आपको. So ये जो है ना, so there has been I mean, in a sense, there has been an allocation of resources driven by some of these. And if you look at some of the other investments that have taken place, आपको नजर आ जाए उसका impact. किसी ने काम नहीं किया हुआ, and maybe it is time now that we know what the so-called losses and the costs have been to the economy directly in terms of revenue. We can try and assess them and compare them with the benefits to the economy overall. Those पे donations दी गई. अब उसका impact कैसे पता चलता है? I mean, to give you an example, one of the major beneficiaries, because I've been involved in it, is Shah Khan. And he's been a huge beneficiary of not just income tax exemptions of the hospital itself, but those who were donating to it. So अगर आप वो देखें, and what the benefits have been, I mean, considering 90% of the patients actually get free treatment. I mean, this I know for a fact. So मेरे कहने का मतलब ये है कि serious work and should be done, and we can take it sector by sector. आप कह रहे थे ना कि नहीं है sector, तो sector है यार. Sector भी है, at times certain activity है, certain industry है. Fertilizer is a classic example. आपने वो जो subsidy दी हुई है, and so on and so forth. So I think we could pick them up on a sector by sector basis or industry by industry basis and take it on from there. Finally, agriculture income tax पे दो बातें हो गई. देखिए, एक ये कि salary income के basis पे होता है. The point is very simple. All incomes have to be taxed at the same rate irrespective of source. So let's first be clear. अच्छा, agriculture income tax में थोड़ा सा difference जरूर आना चाहिए, because obviously there is a cost running that income. So obviously you have to make an adjustment for cost. अब तो शायद अशमत साहब कह रहे थे कि जी बात ये है कि हम लैंड टैक्स, अब लैंड टैक्स नहीं है, लैंड रेवेन्यू वो पुरानी कहानी है ना, होने के बराबर है. लैंड रेवेन्यू का अब रोल प्रैक्टिकली खत्म हो गया, जब खास तौर पे जब से सो कॉल्ड वॉलंटरी इनकम टैक्स आया. अब वो लोग नहीं दे रहे. The point आप कह रहे हैं कैसे करें? Now there are two ways to do this. Either you are exposed to FBR, जिस पर नदीम उल हक साहब हंसना शुरू कर देंगे. Either you are exposed to FBR or we can have some concept of an excise duty, को जो आप कह रहे हैं ना कि क्या होगा, उन्होंने कहा अच्छा जी ऐसा करने के 50,000 रुपए एकड़ के हिसाब से जो उन्होंने किया कैलकुलेट करने के लिए. There are two ways to do this. Either you are exposed to the taxman and then you suffer, or we do it in a way that becomes much more friendly for you, keeping in mind that you should not be penalized by paying an excise duty, a form of excise duty. मैं कहता हूँ जी आपकी इतनी फसल हुई थी उस पे इतना % दे दे. So that's one form of excise duty. But the point simply is, there has to be a way which gives the impression of it is equitable. At the moment, my own feeling, I think we are making too much of the amount of money we will collect from agricultural income tax. But I genuinely believe that. Itna collect nahi hoga in net terms. But you know, Shahid Saab, the perception and the optics are such that you need to give that perception that everyone is paying his fair share. So I'll just stop here.
Thank you. Ikram Saab, can you give us your thoughts and sum up on the questions that have been asked? And in particular, please, खुदा के वास्ते बताइए, इतनी complicated tax policy क्यों हमारी है? हम सब की जान निकलती है और हम अपने आप को अमेरिका समझते हैं, ग्लोबल इनकम पे टैक्स करते हैं, फ्लाइंग चीज पे टैक्स करते हैं, फ्लाइंग बर्तानिया ग्लोबल इनकम पे नहीं कर रहा, चाइना नहीं कर रहा, कोई नहीं कर रहा, सिर्फ हम कर रहे हैं और हम सारों को दुनिया को तंग किए हुआ कोई नहीं करता तंग, बाकी सब कर रहे हैं. क्या कर
Correction. Ikram can also dwell on it far better than us. हमारे यहाँ भी ये है कि 183 days जहाँ पे आप होंगे उसे basis पे tax. But once you're here and resident on a full basis as a Pakistani, then you pay your taxes on those. थोड़ी सी correction कर लीजिए.
Dear Nadeem, perhaps the most important question that I think which is hunting our mind again and again is that when you are faced with tax codes that are outdated, complex, your procedures, your withholding, and all these together, and then when you look at the expenditure side, you see that there is a little logic we can make that who gives this kind of exemptions, waivers, amnesties, and ultimately we are losers. You are right, because unless we shift our main emphasis from tax to growth, and taxes can be very easily rationalized. We have already written a simplified income tax law, but IMF wants their own persons to write that, because now if there is a 400 million raised revenue Pakistan loan, who has advised you to take this loan? Parliament has advised this government to take this another loan of 400 million to write another stupid law for us, which has no cultural, no historical, and even best world practices. Who will write that? And same is true with the custom. You have so many tariff lines, you have so many rates. Same is with the sale tax. Why are you making things complicated and not simplified? I can quote many countries where you have simplified tax laws and you are getting much better than us. Why? Because even they are lesser economies in size also. I'm not taking the countries that way. So my point is that please, we should not waste time more on these debates that are pushing us again and again in. And since we are being sucked into their game, and we will never progress. So whether it is agriculture income tax, or it is capital gain tax, or it's interest tax, or you have rightly mentioned that if we tax all sources of income without any exemptions, and already we are doing that by withholding taxes, not giving the people back their money. They have no taxable income, but we have over the period accumulated their withholding. But who knows? They are not claiming it back. Because why they should claim it back? They even don't know they are taxpayers. Tell me, out of this 95 million mobile users who are paying 12.5% income tax, how many can say they are the taxpayers? They're not filing return. Why they should file return? Because they don't have 400,000 in basic income, many of them, a large majority of them. So FBR should have some studies to, first of all, have a real tax base. Whether it is in agriculture, in this sector or that sector, they completely lack any research cell They have a directorate of training institute and whatnot, lot of buildings, people there, not a single studies there. PIDE has done 2 studies. We earlier done under prime. Prior to that in 2014, huge 700-page study, but they are not aware of that. So my point is that if we really want to coordinate with researchers, if they really want to have some informed decisions, if they really want to change the system, then we will have to come out of this traditional debate. Now, I tell my dear, very dear friend, that why there is a need to give exemption to State Bank of Pakistan, although it is a government reserve bank. You have a stupidity in constitution as well. But constitution says, Article 165, that government, provincial governments will not be taxed. It's not a question of that Rima Saiba was telling us from income tax ordinance. It is written in the constitution of Pakistan. But Article 165 is saying that the federal government will levy tax even on provinces if they do business beyond their territorial jurisdiction. Secondly, they say any organization that is established by a separate statute of the parliament is not government for the purpose of taxation. No matter where the money ultimately go, they say. Article exactly saying it hardly matters where the ultimately tax is going. They will have to pay tax. Therefore, we have to give specific tax exemption in second schedule of the income tax ordinance to State Bank. So the whole system, right from the constitution to the courts, so mess up. Now you tell me, in which country you are asking people to have 66 or 69 withholding even under income tax ordinance, 20 in sale tax or more, and then provinces again have withholding taxes. Have you ever seen in any country that without transaction, they're asking you that you please pay me in advance. I have imported something. I haven't sold it yet, but they're saying you pay me 17% sale tax. Why? And then over and above that, compulsory value addition. Then over and above that, income tax. Now I haven't even in possession of goods, my God, to say to sell them. And you are asking me that on 100 rupees, please pay me 65 rupees at source. So how I will do business, tell me? Under invoicing, smuggling, with the connivance to understate goods, misclassify. What you are teaching your people, and then you are blaming them that they are corrupt. Look at the system. So please, let us stop these debates and ask them to collect taxes where income is generating. I fully agree with Shahid Qadar. If I am receiving dividend, they should be taxed at the same rate as a salaried person is paying. If I am earning interest income, I should be taxed at the same rate. Let us go for the lower rates, but let's go to the broad-based. But you have a very good point, and you have always been saying you are killing transactions. You are destroying economy. Agenda of lender and donors. Tax. I am sick of this tax now. I write more on tax, and now perhaps I can say with good authority that please, now we should have, they have a few days back established another wing, which is now called reform and modernization. So after 2 years, they have realized that FBR, not in the overall context of civil service reforms which they have promised, this will be another member who will do that. Most welcome. So let us, what reforms and modernization you want? That is, give people chance to work, give people chance to flourish, give industry chance to flourish, give every economic activity to take place, and for the time being, please simplify your taxes and you will be better off. Otherwise, we will keep on discussing these issues which are to me have become irrelevant and also taxing for me now, because by this taxing, we are actually destroying ourselves, our social lives, our up because everybody's afraid. Oh, notice will come to me now. Yesterday they released news to the press that 1 million non-filer data has been given to NADRA to take them to task. Now, what is this kind of threat is to the state in the COVID situation? And journalist friends like Mehtab is sitting here, or many others will ask you that FBR is sending data to NADRA, penalize people. What? So, you know, this fear which we have created like a Thana type, it's gone now. So this is where I will end, Nadeem. And I think my only praise that they learn their necessary lessons if they are ready to. Otherwise, we will be remain like this.
Thank you, Kramsab. Thank you. Maybe I'll turn to you to look at all the questions and whatever you want to say. You have the last word. I just like to add one little thing, which I think many people have echoed. Maybe our tax policy, as Sarah Nazamani showed, when you increase taxes, growth goes down. When you increase revenues, growth goes down. Yet we have followed this donor myth के जी टैक्सेशन पहले होनी चाहिए, टैक्सेशन के बारे में कुछ नहीं हो सकता. जैसे मैंने कहा मेरी आर्ग्यूमेंट हुई डिफिट वालों से, इजाज नबी से, CDPR से, वो भी यही कह रहे हैं टैक्स बढ़ाओ फिर बात बनेगी, बाकी कुछ नहीं हो सकता. हमने टैक्स बढ़ाते बढ़ाते पिछले 30 सालों में इकोनॉमी का तो सत्यानाश कर दिया. लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ रेट नीचे जा रही है, ट्रांजैक्शन खत्म हो गए, इन्वेस्टमेंट खत्म हो गई है, कोई भी नहीं अब इन्वेस्ट करना चाहता है इस मुल्क में, बिकॉज सब डरे हुए हैं कि यार ये क्या, ये टैक्स पॉलिसी रोज सुबह शाम बदलती है, ट्रांजैक्शन हो नहीं सकते, मुसीबत पड़ जाती है, डॉक्यूमेंट करते रहते हैं हम. तो कुछ इस पर भी आप नजरसानी करें. आई थिंक ये बहुत अच्छी बात है, आपने टैक्स एक्सपेंडिचर रिपोर्ट कर दी है, बट हमें नेक्स्ट ये भी चाहिए, मतलब आप हमसे ताउन करें, सबसे ताउन करें. वी आर हैप्पी टू एंगेज विद यू, वी आर हैप्पी टू वर्क विद यू. वी नीड अ ग्रोथ ओरिएंटेड टैक्स पॉलिसी. हम देने से कासर नहीं है, बट अगर हम खा नहीं सकते तो टैक्स नहीं दे सकते. इसको मैं कहता हूँ शेरिफ ऑफ नॉटिंगहम सिंड्रोम. वो रॉबिनहुड में यही होता था, शेरिफ पहले टैक्स लेता था, फिर कोई उगाता नहीं था कुछ, फिर इकोनॉमी बैठ जाती थी, फिर रॉबिनहुड आकर चोरी करता था. तो अब हमें कोई रॉबिनहुड चाहिए यहाँ आपसे चोरी करके हमें वापस दे पैसे, क्योंकि ये सेंसिबल नहीं है. और आपने ठीक कहा कि जी पॉलिटिशियन डिसीजन मेकर्स हैं, बट रीमा भी एक और भी बात है कि FBR, मैं भी हुकूमत में रहा हूँ, शायद कारदार भी हुकूमत में रहा है, इनको पता है, FBR आखिरी मोमेंट पे यानी कि मई में टैक्स के प्रपोजल दे के आता था फॉर द बजट. वो प्रपोजल हमेशा एक ही होते थे कि जी मोबाइल पर टैक्स लगा दें, फलाने को 2% कर दें, टैक्स पेयर्स को 3%, 1.5%, ये वो इसके. हाँ, हम यही पॉइंट रेज करते थे. खुदारा रिसर्च कहाँ है, आपकी कोहेरेंट पॉलिसी कहाँ है, वेयर इज योर ग्रोथ ओरिएंटेड टैक्स पॉलिसी. अमेरिका में हमने 3 एपिसोड्स में देखा, उन्होंने टैक्स रिड्यूस किया ग्रोथ बढ़ाने के लिए. अभी अमेरिका ने फिर टैक्स नहीं रिड्यूस किया, चलो पैसे वापस कर रहे हैं लोगों को, $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 वापस कर रहे हैं लोगों को. ठीक. तो द क्वेश्चन इज कि वी नीड अ कोहेरेंट कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव टैक्स पॉलिसी. एक्सपेंडिचर तो बहुत अच्छा आपने काम किया. अभी हमें चाहिए ये कि आप इससे आगे बढ़े, हमें ग्रोथ ओरिएंटेड टैक्स पॉलिसी भी दें, और डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, ये टैक्स का जो सारा शोर व गुल है कि कौम टैक्स चोर है, इसको भी जरा खत्म करें और एक ठीक तरफ आ जाए. रिमा विल बी ओवर टू यू ऑन ऑल दीज इश्यूज.
So thank you so very much to all the panelists or the participants. There's some very, very valuable input, sir. And we hope to work with you, sir, in the future. क्योंकि like I said, हम तो we're not specialists, sir. आप हैं और बाकी भी sir हमारे यहाँ participant. Sir, just जो है one by one, महमूद साहब का था कि ये आपने कोई इसके ऊपर कोई किया है कि जी जो टैक्स एग्जेम्पशंस हैं इनका economic activity पे कोई has there been a positive impact or not. तो नहीं महमूद साहब, like you see that no, we don't know, and that reinforces my point कि हम tax code के through we try and think कि भी it's like a magic wand, tax code में आप exemption दोगे, ये मराद दोगे तो ये हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा. I think the government should also look at other alternatives, you know, rather than tinkering with tax codes. ये necessarily prove नहीं हुआ कि जी ये tax credits या reductions देने के नतीजे में, for example, investment में, manufacturing में, या कोई और जो है शोबा जाते हैं उनमें कोई खातिर ख्वाह there's been, you know, a perceptible improvement. So no, we have not conducted the study, and really I would invite my colleagues from PIDE and from other institutions also कि बिल्कुल इसका I mean I agree with you कि होना चाहिए कि जी जो हमने exemptions डाली हुई है इनको just for purposes कि लोगों की जो pressure groups हैं या जो parties हैं सिर्फ to for their liking हमने डाली है या कोई अफादियत भी पाकिस्तान को हो रही है कि नहीं हो रही in terms of more investment और more employment generation etc etc. तो सर fully agreed कि इसके ऊपर FBR तो अभी तक हमने हमारा frankly mandate भी ये नहीं है लेकिन we would be willing to work with anyone who's willing to conduct such a study, sir. सर दूसरा जो आपने का महमूद साहब ने कि withholding taxes सर इकरामुल हक साहब ने भी अपनी valuable input दी कि stifling तो सर we have मतलब we recognize कि बिल्कुल सर over time जो withholding taxes हैं उनका income tax में बात करूँगी being chief income tax policy आप एक ट्रांजैक्शन एक टेलीफोन का कार्ड लेते हो 100 रुपए का उसके ऊपर भी आपका जो है कटौती हो रही है and the list has sort of grown longer and longer and longer because frankly it's easier said than done मतलब आपके ऊपर रेवेन्यू का इतना प्रेशर होता है that you look for measures which are perhaps not the best measures economics wise या taxation wise लेकिन आपको ये आपके सर के ऊपर एक वो होता है कि you have to come up with this amount of revenue so you fully agreed कि जो withholding taxes हैं we had to rely upon them because of a narrow tax base लेकिन सर अब ये हमने इस बजट में we have removed 9 withholding taxes और ये हालांकि जिस तरह की इकरामुल हक साहब ने भी कहा कि अगर मुआवजा किया जाए तो कुछ टैक्सेस हैं कि हुआ द मेजर कंट्रीब्यूटर्स तो बाकी हमने वी हैव ट्राइड कि हमने इस बजट में विदहोल्डिंग टैक्सेस इनकम टैक्स की बात करूँ रिमूव कर दिए हैं सर एंड इंशाल्लाह आई थिंक वी आर गोइंग टू डू सो द नेक्स्ट ईयर एंड द नेक्स्ट ईयर एंड द नेक्स्ट ईयर तो तकरीबन वी आर मतलब ये प्लान बिल्कुल ऑन बोर्ड है कि विदहोल्डिंग टैक्सेस को हमने ग्रेजुअली इन द सेंस के you'll see it happening in the next 2-3 years कि कम से कम 30 to 40 withholding taxes हमने खत्म करने कुछ जो ज़्यादा revenue yielding है sir I don't know it is obviously जो भी government होगी या है it is their decision लेकिन for example आपने imports की बात की अब letting go of withholding tax on imports even though perhaps from a theoretical point of view it is not good tax policy कि आप import की stage पे बंदे को कह रहे हो कि आप मुझे दो लेकिन सर हमारे looking at it from FBR's point of view हमारे सामने भी हमारे सामने बंद गली हैं we have to the moment फिर वही argument आ जाती है कि as the tax base broadens so then we'll be more than willing to do away with these withholding taxes because yes they are distortionary presumptive taxes हमने mostly phase out कर दिए हैं they've been converted into minimum taxes we would eventually want them to be converted into adjustable taxes लेकिन वो तभी होगा सर कि जब हमारा through enforcement effort और जब तक हमारा tax base broaden नहीं होगा and the people who are supposed to be paying taxes जब तक वो tax नहीं देंगे sir we are going to have to rely on withholding taxes also and on other taxes which are theoretically distortionary लेकिन सर इट इज़ वेल टेकन बिल्कुल कि जिस तरह कि ऑल जिस तरह कि शायद कारदार साहब ने भी कहा कि ऑल इनकम्स मतलब सिटिंग एज एन इकोनॉमिस्ट हियर मतलब इट वुड बी म्यूजिक टू माय इयर्स अगर ये होता कि ऑल इनकम्स शुड बी टैक्स्ड इक्वली लेकिन सर जैसे मैंने आपको पहले भी कहा कि द डिफरेंट गवर्नमेंट्स विच कम एक चीज़ होती है पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी और एक चीज़ होती है कि व्हाट शुड रियली हैपन तो सो लाइक आई सेड सर हम तो इम्प्लीमेंटर्स हैं and it is really the decision of the political जो है government कि where they want to take it. सर हम कोशिश बिल्कुल करते हैं जो budget making process है 2 साल I was secretary and this year I was chief कि हम उसको all inclusive करें and we start from January sir and we do try to take all stakeholders on board absolutely मतलब for myself I can say कि we generate about 400-500 पेज का डॉक्यूमेंट जिसमें कि तमाम एक छोटा बंदा से लेके एक बड़ी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की जितनी भी टैक्स प्रपोजल्स हैं वो हम लेके जाते हैं सर उनका इवेंचुअली वो होना या ना होना सर देन अगेन दैट इज द डिसीजन ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट द सिटिंग गवर्नमेंट सर सर बिल्कुल जो ग्रोथ ओरिएंटेड टैक्स पॉलिसी है सर देन अगेन दैट इज द बेस्ट केस सिनारियो मैंने तो सर यहाँ पे एज अ ग्रेड 20 ऑफिसर मैंने ये देखा है कि we are firefighting, you know, and we have to bring in mini budgets, and because especially under fund program आपके इतने टाइट किस्म के आपके टारगेट्स होते हैं कि you know there's hardly a breather for the chairman FPR. So sir, अगर I wish we had the luxury कि हम you know we would take a step back and say कि यार हम एक growth oriented tax policy हम लाते हैं. I mean on a personal level, just on a personal note, I think we are हम एक firefighting हम कर रहे होते हैं कि जी इतना revenue हमने you know we have to get from here and there. So Ikram साहब sir, most respectable sir. Sir, जिस तरह इकराम साहब का थोड़ा criticism था कि you know there's this एक फिजा है डर की for the taxpayers. Sir, I don't know. Perhaps I'm wearing the cap of a tax collector. Then, लेकिन sir, I've been in service for 20 years now, and sir, एक हम universal self assessment scheme लाए हैं जो अभी भी जो है राइज है, जो इकराम साहब कह रहे हैं कि you know the current ordinance. So I feel कि really you know in our setup जहाँ के undocumentation है and things like that, I don't even know if you were ready for a universal self assessment scheme. तो I don't know कि अगर इस तरह की कोई information जाती भी है कि you know Nagra is sharing information and so forth, so it should not worry taxpayers who are compliant. It should not worry taxpayers who are compliant. Anybody who is compliant, who has taxed money with him or her, उसको फिक्र नहीं होनी चाहिए कि मेरी information नादरा से ली जा रही है, X या किसी land authority से ली जा रही है. So I would defend FPR in that respect. कि like in every country, you know, it is not only you know carrot. It has to be, there has to be some sort of deterrence also for non-abiding or non-compliant taxpayers. And tax code की you know it's because अगर हम ये because whenever I go to the US, my sister's there. आप एक टैक्सी ड्राइवर को भी कहें कि I'm from the IRS तो उसकी जान निकल जाती है. So you know, I mean, they have sort of the deterrence sir in even developed countries, that is very much there, because the gentleman knows that if I get caught तो फिर ये होगा. So it's not only, it can't only be carrot, there has to be a stick also. और इकराम साहब की बात जो है कि so like I said कि information जैसी भी है, अगर एक बंदा clean है तो उसको ये you know he should be undeterred by whatever information FPR is getting from anywhere, sir. And sir, this is I think all from my end, sir. Tax amnesty का मेहताब हैदर साहब ने कहा था. Kardar साहब sir has responded to him कि बिल्कुल मतलब उनका एक point of view है कि जी you know कि reduced rate of tax पे ये जो पैसा है ये white हो गया, और वरना obviously normal rate पे होता. लेकिन yes, that was not made part of the report, sir, because strictly speaking from an academic point of view, it is not a tax expenditure per se, albeit of course we obviously people had a chance to whiten the money at much lower rates. And sir, ये है कि we would just, in the end I would say that we would like to work with PIDE, work with other economists. जिस तरह हमने कहा कि strengthening the tax policy unit so is very important, is extremely important, and I hope कि FPR या the government इस चीज़ को seriously ले. We should have proper, you know, I mean, econometric modeling जो मैंने एक ज़माने में पढ़ी थी. So you know, decision making should be as judicious, as equitable as possible. तो बिल्कुल सर ये जो proposition है कि tax policy unit को strengthen होना चाहिए. Even you know अभी भी एक proposal है कि हम economists on board लेंगे as consultants to help us with the budget exercise, you know, in tabulating different things. So sir बिल्कुल as tax policy chief I would say कि बिल्कुल we need your help, and बिल्कुल everybody is most welcome to जो है contribute, sir. And sir, I would like to thank everybody in the end. Very valuable suggestions, sir, and we will take them into consideration, sir.
Nadeem sir, can I just add two things quickly? Just 2 seconds.
Sir, if you add, then I'll have to allow many people to add. And we'll go into another round. We'll do another session on tax again. This is not the last session we are doing. Let me just say very, just in passing, at the end, sorry, in conclusion, Rima Bibi, thank you very much. I think this is music to our ears that you're developing the tax policy unit. जब मैं planning commission में था, तो मैं हर बारी tax reform committee पे FBR जाते थे, मैं हमेशा या जब वो Ministry of Finance आते थे, I used to always ask आपके पास कोई research unit है, और पता चला कोई नहीं है. Now आप सब ने disaster movie देखी होगी. मैं जब disaster movie देखता हूँ, उसमें से जो Poseidon Adventure ले लें या Volcano ले लें, disaster movies में एक pattern होता है बड़ा मजेदार. Disaster आता है, जैसे कल लेबनान में बॉम्ब फटा है, तो पहले तो लोग अफरा तफरी में भागते हैं, इधर उधर के भागते हैं, क्राइसिस मोड होता है. फिर कहीं मिडिल ऑफ द मूवी में जाके एक कोई एक्सपर्ट की कमेटी या कोई एक्सपर्ट्स आ जाते हैं, वो स्टडी करते हैं प्रॉब्लम को और फिर वो इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं प्लान को और सॉल्व करते हैं इशू को. क्राइसिस मोड में कुछ नहीं सॉल्व होता. पर आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रही हैं, हमारी हुकूमत जब से मैं पैदा हुआ, और माशाल्लाह मेरी उम्र 29 साल हो गई है, शायद ज़्यादा ही हो गई है, बट कभी मैंने नॉन क्राइसिस मोड नहीं देखा. क्यों जी, किसी ने नॉन क्राइसिस मोड देखा इस मुल्क में? एवरी टाइम इट्स अ क्राइसिस मोड. तो मैं खुदा के वास्ते कहता हूँ कि डिजास्टर मूवी का मिडिल नहीं है, एंड जा रहा है. कुछ देर जरा रुक जाएं, हर जगह रिसर्च यूनिट बिल्डअप करें और सोचें. आपने बड़ी बातें कही हैं, बट IMF की आपने बात कही. मैं IMF की तरफ से भी एक छोटी सी बात कह दूं, क्योंकि मेरा ताल्लुक IMF से रहा है और काफी गहरा रहा है.
ये जरा पहले आप ये माने ना कि आप उस इदारे से हैं, मरवाने वाले आप.
मैं मानता हूँ IMF वाले भी हमें कहते हैं कई दफा कि भाई अपना प्लान तो बताओ, नेगोशिएट तो करो. हम नेगोशिएट ही नहीं करते, हमारे पास प्लान ही नहीं होता. और ये शायद कारदार भी मानेगा, जब हम बैठते थे बजट के लिए, 3 साल मैंने बजट बनाया है, 3 साल बजट के लिए बैठते हैं, FBR की तरफ से वही प्रपोजल आते हैं कि जी फलानी जगह 2% करते हैं, ऊपर 1% इधर कर दें, 1.5%.
देखिए, बात आपने जो बुनियादी की है कि जी ये we've never done our homework, बट आप ये भी ज्यादती कर रहे हैं कि आप FBR को कह रहे हैं, where at the same time some of us including you argue कि पॉलिसी किसी के पास और होनी चाहिए, इनका काम कलेक्शन है. उसके बावजूद आप कह रहे हैं कि FBR ने कभी कुछ नहीं दिया. So that, there is this contradiction.
I'm not talking about FBR. I'm just saying that we generally get there, and FBR का जो policy unit है now must begin the research, because एक चीज I'm a strong believer in this, कि research does lead to change. आपने जो टैक्स एक्सपेंडिचर रिपोर्ट निकाली है, ये इसकी बहुत इफादियत है, बिकॉज हर किसी को अब पता चल रहा है ये क्या होता है. वरना हम बात करते थे कभी कभी किसी सेमिनार में, समझ नहीं आती थी लोगों को, मुझे खुद समझ नहीं आती थी मैं क्या कह रहा हूँ. ठीक है, अब ये आपकी रिपोर्ट की वजह से मैं कहता हूँ हर हुकूमती का इदारे को ऐसी रिपोर्ट शाया करनी चाहिए ताकि हमें पता चले, पब्लिक को पता चले, तभी आते पब्लिक को पता चले. तो अगर आपका रिफॉर्म यूनिट स्ट्रेंथन होगा, हम आपके साथ हैं, फुली साथ हैं. मैं आप सारों के लिए, शायद कारदार इकराम, एवरीबडी, मैं सबके लिए दावे से कहता हूँ हम आपके साथ हैं. हम आपको स्ट्रेंथन करना चाहते हैं, बिकॉज असली गवर्नेंस का मतलब यही है. हम आपके साथ मिलके इंशाल्लाह 4, 5, 6 और सेमिनार कराएंगे, जितने आप कहेंगे हम कराएंगे, और हम आपको पुश करेंगे आप हमारे साथ मिलके करें, बिकॉज ये हमारा एक कौमी फायदा है. इफ वी लर्न मोर एंड इफ वी एजुकेट द पीपल मोर. तो रीमा बीबी, थैंक यू वेरी मच. शायद कारदार, थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Thank you very much.
And Ikram Sahab, thank you very much, and thank you to the audience, and we'll inshallah take this issue up again very soon. Thank you, Rima Bibi. My thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hafiz.
मेरा तो नहीं